Okay, well, thanks everyone for coming tonight. Tonight we have Elizabeth and Judy, and they're going to inform you guys about composting. Take it away, guys.
Hi, everybody. We are your friendly neighbors who love to compost. And Judy and I are delighted to have been asked by the Larchmont Library to talk to you about something that we absolutely love doing. People have composted for centuries, and like so many other things, according to Michael Pollan, if you keep on doing it the way your great grandmother did it, you're usually in very good shape. And we're going to show you how she did it and how we do it. My mother actually composted her vegetable scraps when we were growing up and used chicken bones to make chicken soup and things like that. And so I've been composting forever, and my kids got used to that, but I was absolutely ecstatic when Karen Core started the food scrap recycling program for Larchmont Mamaroneck, because this was going to give me an opportunity to compost everything we weren't able to compost before, which is those chicken bones and meat and bread and anything that you can't put in your backyard compost. So I know that my kids, really, teased me a lot about it when they came home one day for a family meal about 3 years ago. My kids are adults, and they said, "You found another way to compost, Mom." But then in about a day, they were doing it better than I was, and they've been doing it ever since. And that's one thing we want to say to you, that children and young adults catch on to this very quickly, figure out how to do it, and they understand why we do it. So that's a very good thing.
Mm-hmm. I came to it later. We didn't compost when I was growing up, but as I got older and, I would prepare dinners for myself and then my husband and then our family, every time I'd like peel a cucumber, I'd think there's got to be a better way than just throwing it in the trash. So I sat through a continuing ed how to compost and started backyard composting. But I was really excited, as Elizabeth said, when Larchmont and Mamaroneck, and then in like Low HUD, I think Scarsdale was getting a lot of traction about what they were doing. So I thought, gee, I wonder if, the Larchmont Mamaroneck would do it. And then a few years later, they did start this food scrap recycling program, which made it really, really easy. And since then, I've, volunteered time to try to promote the practice, because it is really easy. And I'm going to steal a quote from Anthony Bourdain, who is the now deceased chef. And he said, never has so little an effort resulted in such a good outcome. And I believe in that. I'm a lazy composter. If it's not easy, I wouldn't do it. And it's extremely easy and convenient. So. Okay, so we're going to talk about this whole concept that, food isn't trash. And I just want to take a few minutes, because Larchmont Mamaroneck has this campaign called Love Your Food, and it has this really kind of engaging video. So let's watch it for a minute, and then we'll talk about it. So the, sorry, back up. Can we do this? Okay, so the whole concept of food isn't trash is really kind of at the core of the program, because when you throw food into the regular trash and don't compost it, you lose all of that rich nutrient that can become a soil amendment that can actually help trees and plants to grow. So it isn't trash. It's something completely other. So let's go on and we'll talk about what compost is. If you Google compost, you'll come up with a ton of definitions, but at its core, it really is this concept that food scraps and other natural organic matter can be turned into this rich soil amendment. Okay, so let's talk about, we know what it is, why should we do it? The first point is really, it's extremely easy. It's the difference between scraping the plates after dinner into your garbage can or scraping it into your compost bin. It also saves money, right, Elizabeth? We were talking about the fertilizer. I think you're muted, hon.
Compost, sorry.
That's okay.
Again, compost is free fertilizer. In the yard, we are learning to leave the leaves. So when you're doing backyard composting, this is basically replaces your need for commercial fertilizers completely if you use what's already there.
Mm-hmm. The other point of this diverting from the food waste stream, when I was talking about not putting it in your trash, the EPA website has a whole host of statistics, but a couple kind of stand out, that about 40 tons of food is thrown away a year. And that really translates into the third largest the component of methane gas that comes out of landfills. That's about 15.1% of all of the methane gases come directly from these municipal waste streams that have food in the landfills.
Right. And so the third point, protecting our natural resources, we're thinking, for example, of Long Island Sound. Composting minimizes the use of industrial, synthetic, petroleum-based fertilizers that are high in nitrogen, way too high in nitrogen. And the problem with those commercial fertilizers is our landscapers tend to use more than we actually need, and they filter down into the groundwater where they can pollute drinking water. And they also get washed off our property down the street and into Long Island Sound, where they cause eutrophication, which can cause fish die-off, which we have seen periodically in Long Island Sound.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is, when you start composting, it is amazing how much lighter your trash is. We do at my neighborhood has the Monday, Thursday garbage pickup. And because I've started composting, I will put out trash, and not that much of it, on a Monday. And I may not put out my trash again until a week from that Thursday, because so much of the food is water-based. It's actually extremely heavy. It's amazing how much lighter your trash will be. And your yard will be lovely. So these are two pictures. These are in my COVID project, was to, rather than ask my landscaper to plant bulbs, I decided to do it myself. And I thought, oh, you know what? I have compost. I'll put it on top, and I'm watching the fruits of my compost over my tulip bulbs.
And the photo on the right shows a lovely native tree, an American redbud, that is growing very happily in a yard that has no pesticide or herbicide use, but that is also fertilized solely with compost.
Mm-hmm. And these are just some more pictures of the value of composting.
Yes, we're showing examples of the kind of yard you can have when you use the compost as the fertilizer. And you'll notice the little sign. Some of you know this already. The Larchmont Mamaroneck Healthy Yards gives out these signs to people who sign up for healthy gardening methods, which include using compost and also not using pesticides and herbicides. For the fellow bird watchers, you'll see there's some echinacea, purple coneflower, which is a wonderful native plant, which is very attractive to pollinators and other beneficial insects thriving in its natural habitat.
Okay, so we're going to talk about two composting systems. Elizabeth's going to take you through backyard composting, and then I'll pick it up with the Larchmont Mamaroneck Food Scrap Recycling Program.
Okay, so this is a photo of my compost bins, the two compost bins in my backyard. Backyard composting requires 4 basic elements from a chemical point of view: nitrogen, carbon, water, oxygen. It's going to get a lot simpler after this. So the nitrogen-rich materials we also refer to as the greens. Those are vegetables, fruit peels, coffee grounds, fruit. And we need to balance those. This is one of the key aspects of backyard composting, and I'll go into this in detail. We need to balance those with what we call the browns. The browns are dried leaves or newspaper or straw or wood chips or nutshells. And we need to, every time we put in the greens, we have to balance that by putting in browns. And the other two elements you need are water. Water, which gets the whole process going, and then oxygen, because if you don't have oxygen, you can't see it in this photo, but there are slats on either side of my compost bins, and also I should have lifted it up for the picture, but you remove the compost at the bottom of the bin. That's a little door that slides up, which you can also open to provide more oxygen. If you don't have oxygen, you get anaerobic process, which is what happens in landfills when we put our food scraps into the trash, into the garbage, and they're just hauled away with the rest of the trash. They go into the landfill and they're buried under so many layers that there is no oxygen. And so they give off methane, which is a very powerful greenhouse gas. So we don't want to be doing that. Okay, next. Thanks, Judy. So this is the system that I use for my backyard composting. I do both, and I'll explain to you why. So I bought this handy little composting can at Bed Bath & Beyond probably at least 10 years ago. I think they still sell them. It's a wonderful, attractive unit. It has a you see those holes in the cover. There is a filter that is replaceable. I don't usually replace it more than every 6 months to a year. It doesn't seem like it needs it. There is no odor given off when the top is on this little pail. And so there you can see the type of thing that I happen to have that day, some orange rinds and leeks and scallions, and you can put in this little compost pail for your backyard composting any steamed or boiled vegetable or anything raw, vegetable and fruit. And that's basically all we put in there. We can also put the shells of nuts, coffee grounds and eggshells, but I don't do that because I find it easier to do those in the municipal compost. They take a long time to break down. But they're acceptable, the coffee grounds, in your backyard composting. We do not put in meat, fish, cooked food scraps, plate leftovers, or bread.
So not that.
Don't put in there. I couldn't resist putting this picture in there, but then with that type of food item, you usually don't have any left when everybody's done eating, so it's not a problem. I take my little container when it's full out to the backyard bins that you just saw the picture of, and I've opened the bin, and you can see that I've put those vegetables and fruit scraps on top of a layer of leaves that was there before. And then you see in the photo on the right that I have put whatever I had in my bag. I'll show another picture later, but you'll see I have a bag, one of those gardening brown bags that I keep the dried leaves in. And you can also see a little bit of leftover iris leaves from the prior year. I keep that stuff through the winter so that I always have some browns to alternate with my greens. And the basic principle of composting is add a little more browns than greens. And the way I do that is I cover all the food. You can see in the photo, you can't see any more food items. And this makes it so that it won't, it gives approximately the right ratio of what you need in browns to greens. Let's see, what else did I want to say for this? Be sure to remove all the labels from any fruit and vegetable. These labels that some of us remember a time when we didn't have those little computerized labels. They used to be made out of paper, but now they're made out of plastic. We don't want those in our compost, either backyard or municipal, because they do not break down. Okay, we're ready for the next slide, Judy.
Okay.
Great. So here's my compost bin. You can see that I've opened it and I've filled it. Sometimes, like every gardener, I spend a lot of time looking at my phone to see what the weather's going to be. And when it's going to rain, I will leave both of them open because that's a lot easier. Judy was talking about how easy this is. That's easier than putting in water with a garden hose. But in the middle of summer, if we have gone through a period of time when we haven't had very much rainfall and I feel like the compost is quite dry, I will put water in it. I don't do it very often. Sometimes I don't do it for months at a time if there's been rainfall, or in the winter, it doesn't tend to get very dry. It doesn't, compost as quickly in the winter because it's cold out, but I do this all year round. And one thing I do when my bin starts to get full, as you can see it is in this picture, is I will sometimes put in a little bit of organic fertilizer. And then I will water it because that gets the activity going in terms of breaking down the leaves and the greens in order to turn it into the rich compost material that's going to be moving down to the bottom of the bin gradually over a period of months. I bought these bins because you can see they are squeezed into a little corner of my yard. The rest of my yard is flowers and plants and, living space. They're in the sun quite a bit, especially when it's not midsummer. It's best to have your compost bins in the sun if you can, because they have to warm up, right, Judy? It has to heat in order for the process to take place, but mine do perfectly fine right where they are. You do what you can with what you have, and it's fine. The other thing is that people will purchase a compost aerator. It's like a stick with a hook at the bottom, and they'll stir around inside the bin. I don't do that. I've never done that. It would probably go faster if I did do that, but I don't bother. So I take the easy way out. Let's see. There is also, you can buy compost starter. It has microorganisms that will speed up the composting. But again, you don't really need to do that. So I don't do that. After I've piled in the leaves, if it's not going to rain and I'm not leaving it on purpose, I close the bins because they are warmer in general when the bin is closed. And so that process can continue or start up with the new material that I've put in there. And I close my leaf bag. You can see that it's open. I've used this same lawn bag probably for years. I just keep emptying it. I keep it and then I fill it. I will say that I have a number of bags in my garage and even behind my garage, because when they're closed, rain or snow or anything else doesn't change anything. They're in there waiting to be added to the compost bin as the browns. I rinse out the countertop pail with the hose if it's warmish weather outside. But in the winter, I just rinse it out inside my kitchen and I put it back on the counter. So this picture I took a couple of, about a week ago. I had my spring cleaning and the guys were mulch mowing the leaves that I had left. I leave a lot of leaves in my beds. That's another good thing to do over the winter. It's good for beneficial insects. It protects your plants. It does a lot of good things. So the ones that I didn't put in bags to save for my compost bins, they raked into the middle of the lawn and they went back and forth several times with the lawnmower to mulch mow them. We left some of them on the grass. We put some of them in the beds, but I'm going to try something new because I haven't tried this before. I'm going to use, they gave me 2 bags of shredded leaves because they will compost faster because cutting them up is the first step, right? It's like chewing your food. It's the first step in the process of turning into compost. And so I'll put those in and see how that works as the browns.
Great. Okay, so now what I do, I also have a backyard compost, and what I do a little different is I've created this like mini cylinder with this chicken wire. And as we rake the leaves, I just toss them in there. So when I use my backyard compost, I do the same thing Elizabeth does. Whatever my fresh fruit and vegetable scraps are, I'll bring them out, put them in my backyard composter, and then I'll just take 2 or 3 scoops of leaves that I have in this little cylinder that I've created, sprinkle a little bit of water, close it up, and be done with it. But the majority of my food scrap recycling, I actually use the town's program. And the reason why I do is because it literally will take anything. If it can go in your mouth, it can go in the compost pail. So everything from, I just showed you, I was cutting up some garlic when I was making dinner the other night and literally scraping it in the bin. If you have those old dried out tortilla chips that are horrible, they go in the compost bin. If you have old rice cakes, they go in the compost bin. So it literally is kind of scraping whatever you can put in your mouth into the compost bin, whether it's off the plate or it's maybe expired food. Anyway, what I do is as I line the countertop bin, I hope you can see it there. It sits on my countertop in my kitchen. I line it with a compostable bag. And as you know, I'm peeling a banana, I take off the sticker and then I put the banana peel in there. If I'm cutting the leaves off of a strawberry, those leaves will go in there. If I'm, cutting up an onion, the outer layers of the onion will go in there. So as I go through my day, I'm scraping food into my compost bin. When that fills up, and it probably fills up maybe once or twice a week, depending on, well, not anymore because of COVID, but if we had company over or whatever, that would tend to fill up a little bit quicker. I have a green bin and I keep it in my kitchen. And as the countertop bin gets filled up, I tie up the compostable bags and I put them in the green bin. Both of them have, they close shut, so you don't have any odor from the compost bin. I have a dog who would eat anything and she walks past the green bin, absolutely no interest because she can't smell anything. And I line the green bin also because it makes disposal a little bit easier when I get down to Maxwell Avenue. Okay. And these are Elizabeth bins, a little bit different.
Okay, so I wanted to, after 25 years of living in Larchmont, I finally redid my kitchen. My friends were very amused. They were sure it was never going to happen. So the advantage is what I wanted to show you, that you can, these are standard size bins. The brand that I have there is Revashelf, I think. It's the same size as the other bins. And you see that I was able to design a drawer that has my composting for the food scrap recycling program, where I was just in the process of saying in the chat that I put the coffee and the coffee filter in there. I don't really use paper towels because I've weaned myself off that, but I put, if we have a big party back in the day when we were able to do that and when we're going to be able to do it again, and I use paper plates or compostable serveware, if it's PPI certified, I pop those right in there. And we can talk about that a little bit more later, but this is for all of the, the bones, we were told when we went up to Peekskill to look at when we went up to the northern Westchester to look at the composting facility up there on a field trip a couple of years ago, we saw the enormous piles where they compost food scraps. And they explained to us that some things are composted in that huge pile, which gets very, very hot inside, and they have pipes of air running through it in order to keep it aerobic. That it'll compost in 30 days to 90 days, but there is nothing left in that pile other than compost after 90 days, including any oxtail or any bone from fish or fowl or meat. It's unbelievable what how efficient that process is and how powerful. So I just wanted to show this system, food scrap recycling means, and then I took a picture of my trash, which Judy's now going to show us. I had the nerve. We like Haagen-Dazs.
How much lighter it is.
Yeah, it's very light. There's nothing in there. I'm like Judy. I take it out about every 10 days. I take it out to my driveway, not very often, but when I have to, but I don't take the bin out to the street very often because it doesn't fill up. It's very lightweight, and you get a real understanding of the fact that all of our trash is really basically pieces of plastic. And they're very lightweight, and this doesn't smell, and it's happy, living under the kitchen sink like regular trash.
Right.
So I wanted to show you this as well, because Judy and I do this differently, and everybody, there are many, many different ways that you can do it happily. My green bin has been sitting in my driveway for as long as this program has been going on. It's very happy there. It's very close to my back door where I can take out the bag. You can see right here the special bags, the BPI certified bags that are made out of vegetable material, whether it's corn or something else, and they compost fairly easily, not in your backyard, but at the facility. And so I don't line my green bin because it's outside. I do put a paper bag at the bottom. I find that the bags that I've been buying lately don't seem to leak at all, but if there were a drop or two, that paper bag at the bottom of the bin is going to absorb that and keep things neater. I don't use paper bags, but we've accumulated some, and they come into the house periodically with takeout, or they just come into the house. So that's what I use them for, and it's very, very useful. You can see mine is in the driveway. A lot of people like to put them in the garage. You can basically, I think, put it where works well for you.
Right. Yeah, I line mine with paper towels. If I'm drying my hands off in the paper towel, I'll use it to line the bottom of the countertop bin as well as the green bin, because the food does have moisture in it, and it's a way to help control that moisture.
Absolutely, absolutely. The other thing I wanted to say is tea bags can go in there if they are made out of paper with no staple, or you remove the staple and they have a paper tag. But a lot of the brands that they're selling now of tea bags are made in that way, and they can be composted.
Great. This is an example on the top of the food waste bin, what is accepted and not accepted. And it's part of a food scrap recycling guide that we can send to you all. And it lists kind of how to compost, what items to put in, what items to keep out, and the hours for Maxwell Avenue. It kind of gives a whole bunch of information. So if you would like one of these food scrap guides, well, you can either put it in the chat, or I think Paul is going to be sending out a follow-up email tomorrow, and we can attach the PDF in that if you're interested. But as you can see, it does allow a lot. You have fruits, vegetables, the bones, the shellfish, and the fish. I know, like when I make salmon, I don't like the skin of the salmon. So after I cook it, that goes in my compost bin, and that's perfectly fine, an accepted item to go into the municipal food scrap recycling.
Judy, can I jump in for a second? I want to say also that cut flowers, of course, can go in your backyard recycling. So those can go in either. Those can be recycled with everything else.
Right. Okay. All right. So what happens is when the green bins are filled up, you can go down to Maxwell Avenue if you're using the Larchmont Mamaroneck Food Scrap Recycling Program. And I think everybody probably is familiar with Maxwell Avenue. If you're not, it's just adjacent to the southern entrance to I-95, right by the New York Sports Club. And when you get into the recycling facility, you go up the hill, and it's a series of about 10 or 12 large, about 64-gallon wheeled garbage pails that you can put your food scrap recycling into. And then what happens is, when, I guess it's once a week, the carting company that the municipality has contracted with comes, picks up all the food scraps, transports it up to Ulster County, and that's where it is composted. And it's this huge facility. It must be 10 football fields of this open area that has all of these air and water pipes underneath it to help generate the compost. And when the food scraps are turned into compost, it's actually sold to municipalities as well as landscaping companies, because it is this rich soil amendment. And if you do, even if you don't participate, once a year, Larchmont Mamaroneck gives out free compost for those people who are interested. And that's, we have a date in one of the slides, but that's coming up in a couple of weeks. But you do kind of reap the benefits of your composting, even if you're not doing it in your backyard composting. Okay, so when we talked about love your food, I did want to go back just to show you there, and I'm hoping that this is gonna work. Okay, so this is the Love Your Food website, and it's worth a perusal because it gives you a ton of information about what you really can do to support their, their 3 missions of, eat what you buy, share what you can, and compost the rest. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes just going through this. Under the tab up top, what you can do under the Eat mission, it really gives you a ton of helpful information about guesstimating how much food you should buy if you're cooking dinner or if you're having a party. Based on how many people, the type of food you're going to get, they do give you an estimate of how much you should buy so that you don't waste food that, you overbuy and then you wind up having to throw it away. It also gives you very handy information about expiration dates, which are a little bit tricky because, producers of food want you to buy food. And, in order to do that, they'll have a best use by or an expiration date. And it really does help you kind of navigate some of those confusing terms. It also gives you, which I find helpful, it gives you a sense of what's the shelf life of things like pasta and peanut butter and things that you have in your pantry. So that's really helpful. It also talks and gives ideas about, what do you do with leftovers? Don't throw them out, repurpose them as something else. Helps you to get, maybe a better idea of how you can store things and the type of containers, what you can do with, don't forget the doggy bag because you don't want to waste, because a lot of food is wasted in restaurants. And then also, they have these, under these free materials, they have very handy shopping lists. Under the share program, they really do list out we always have the Larchmont Mamaroneck Food Pantry, which is a great organization to donate, edible food to. Within this share mission, during COVID, the school system has donated tons of food that wasn't being used in the schools. And we've been, there was a program for families that get breakfasts and lunches that they could pick it up, but even though school wasn't in session. And then also any of that excess, whether it was, large groupings of milk and vegetables and bread, were donated to the Hope Community Center in New Rochelle, as well as Don Bosco up in Port Chester. And then on the compost mission, the website really gives you a ton of information, who to email. It can give you how to collect it. That BPI that Elizabeth was talking about earlier, if you're going to use compostable materials, look for this BPI. The recycled triangle has become ubiquitous, and within composting, this BPI would be the equivalent of that triangle for the recycling. And then it gives you information, on how to compost and make it easy. So I would suggest anybody who's interested can go to their website. It's loveyourfoodnewyork.org, and we have it on one of the later slides. It's very well done. It's very engaging, and it has a ton of practical information. Okay, so these are the resources that we were talking about. For any of them, anyone interested in the food scrap recycling, this website, they have rain barrels that you can collect rainwater. They have your normal garbage cans, and then also the food scrap recycling kits. If you specifically want that, you can email the food waste kits at townofmamaronecknewyork.org, and they are offering home delivery of a food scrap kit. And for $20, you get the countertop bin that I showed you in my kitchen, the green bin that Elizabeth and I both showed you, and then they do give you those compostable liner bags for your countertop bins that make transferring of the food easier. For those who, go ahead.
Can I say one quick thing about that? That these bins are very well designed. I mean, this is a total bargain for $20. But the one that I don't use anymore because I recently put in the other system, but it's very well designed. It snaps shut. You don't smell anything. They're beautifully designed, a sort of a wonder of engineering, and they do their function very, very efficiently.
Yes. And both of them have these locking mechanisms that it actually seals it. So you don't have a smell and you don't have leakage. The other thing that just came up is that within Westchester County and Greenberg Nature Center, which is also kind of a vanguard of sustainable living and composting, do have a sale, and they are offering discounts on these backyard composting units, as well as some of the aeration tools that you can use. So if anybody's interested in that, if you are inspired to go that route, this Westchester Composter sale would be able to give you some discounts on that. And then Elizabeth, did you want to talk about the healthy yards?
Yes, well, actually, I think we can do it while we're looking at the other slides, but we will be sending you this information if you are interested. Paul has said that we will be able to share these websites, if you haven't jotted them down, in an email to everybody who signed up for this call. Okay. So we wanted to tell you about related events in our area. Coming up really soon is our wonderful Larchmont Earth Day celebration at Constitution Park, which is going to include tables from Larchmont Environmental Committee and the Sustainability Collaborative as well. And there will be a food scrap recycling table, and there will be as well a shared pollinator pathways and healthy yards table, where we will be handing out printed information about things that Judy and I have been talking about and referring to here. The time is 11 to 2 and the rain date is April 18th. This is going to be a wonderful event. Socially distanced, one of the first events we've been able to do outside, and we were invited to have tables there by Larchmont Environmental Committee. And we're very excited about this event. So yeah, let's go on to the next event, which is the Compost Give Back Day. We're also very excited about that. Anyone who is a resident of the Village of Larchmont or the Town of Mamaroneck can come on April 24th to get their free compost. That is going to be open from 8 to 1. Of course, this year there are special requirements because we need to be socially distanced. You need to bring your own shovel and your own bag or bin in order to fill it with compost. There will be many announcements about this over the next short while from the town and also from the village to remind people of this wonderful Compost Give Back Day. And by the way, I wanted to draw everybody's attention to the fact that this compost, what you get from your backyard composter may not be quite as composted, I guess is how I'm going to say it, as this, where this really looks like, it almost looks like soil. This is an amendment to soil, but it's all made of organic matter. What you get out of your bin at the bottom when you remove it, is going to be very dark, rich matter, very small and broken down, but it won't necessarily look exactly like that. It's just as usable. But this is really beautiful material that we'll be giving away. And the other thing I wanted to say is, I was mentioning to you that I bought those backyard compost bins because they fit into the area that I had available. The one that's being offered by the Greenberg Nature Center is a different style. They have the dimensions on the website, so you can make sure that'll fit your space. There are some compost units that have a handle on them, and you can turn it so that you're turning your compost, and that is going to make it go faster. And it's easier than mixing it with a compost aerator, a manual, the stick type. But again, it sits on a structure that's a little bit wider in order to be stable. And I didn't have the space for that. So mine is fine. And there are many different models which all work fine.
Right. But this, it is a good point. This is what compost is. It is this dark, rich, lovely soil amendment. So if you do get to, and I hope you do get to, the compost give back day, when you walk up, it's amazing. All of the organisms that create this, it's actually, you can see the steam coming off of the compost, so that when you dig into the compost, it's this rich, gorgeous amendment, a soil amendment. And it's because all the organisms are doing their job, it actually generates an enormous amount of heat. So it's actually kind of warm when you get it. So it's actually, it's lovely. It's really good. So I hope you do get to take advantage of it.
So we wanted to also mention that on June 13th is the Westchester Pollinator Garden Tour. This is, I think, the first time possibly that there will be quite a few gardens in Larchmont and Mamaroneck and Lower Westchester, very easy to get to. You can, walk to them or plan to drive to them. This will be people showing their yards and gardens where you can see the results that they've gotten with pesticide-free, pollinator-friendly, native, and some non-native plants are also pollinator friendly, but especially native plants, and use of compost and other natural methods, which it's all part of the same thing, right, Judy? It's all favoring the positive growth of life without the downsides of some of these stronger synthetic materials that are honestly, I don't know if anybody has looked at the price of fertilizer lately, but fertilizer is very expensive. It's a very expensive item. We don't usually see it because we may be paying a landscaper, but it's so much better to do it this way. And these are native asters, which are absolutely lovely. You probably know they bloom at the end of the fall. They are not hard to grow. Monarch butterflies love them. I saw one, but now I see 3 on this picture now that I'm looking at it more closely. It's absolutely delightful. Children love to see, and then I see a different kind of a butterfly there. Children, will stop in the street and look at the plants that have these wonderful pollinators on them. So this is something that the whole family can get interested in and involved in. So if you want to find out more about the Westchester Pollinators Garden Tour, the website is healthyyards.org/garden tour. You see they have a wonderful poster, but some of the properties on the tour are not going to be fancy properties. It doesn't have to be fancy to be on the pollinator pathway. It just has to have native plants, pollinator friendly plants, and beneficial insect friendly practices, which means organics, compost, and no pesticides.
Right. This is, and we're doing a shameless advertisement. This is the We Compost sticker that we're giving out to those participants in the town's food scrap recycling program. We were up at Maxwell Avenue for over a couple of days, 2 or 3 weeks ago. But when you purchase a kit, you will get a We Compost sticker. And we ask that you put it either on your car or on your garbage bin to help spread the practice in the town. And you can also pick it up at Maxwell Avenue, the town, town office, the Grange in one of the, we have two retailers that are helping us out. The Grange has them, as well as Apiary in town. So now we'd like to open it up for questions. Here is a page that you can email people directly, whether it be the Larchmont Mamaroneck Sanitation or Sue O'Darna, who is the sustainability coordinator for the town, or Elizabeth and myself. We're both more than happy to give you our private emails if you have any further questions. And at this point, I think Paul will either go through the chat or open it up for questions.
Okay, there's a number of questions in the chat. A lot of them were answered in the chat, but I guess we can maybe answer them for everyone.
Okay.
Do you need to cut up banana peels or orange rinds?
No.
So sorry. I was gonna, if it's for the backyard composting, and I did put that in the chat, but I will go on to say that, as Judy said, no, you do not. I assume that if you do that, your composting may go faster. But again, I've never seen anything that looked anything like a banana peel or an orange rind at the bottom of my compost bin. So those, I will say that peach pits and avocado pits may not break down completely, but the avocado pit I just throw in my yard. My friends know that I have grown several peach trees right here in Larchmont over the last few years, which was actually a lot of fun. We actually, I mean, because they were in my compost and it didn't heat up to whatever degrees it does at the professional facility. And so I just threw the peach pit, anywhere, and it turned into a tree. We had peaches, but growing peach trees is difficult and usually involves a lot of spraying. And so I'm not growing peach trees anymore because I don't spray.
Right.
Okay, what about roasted vegetables?
So sorry, go ahead, Judy. You answer first, maybe for the
food scrap recycling. Absolutely, it can go in there. For the backyard, it's a little bit, backyard composting is a little bit different. Elizabeth will talk to that. But for the municipal food scrap recycling, absolutely can go in. Yes.
So this is why when I say I was ecstatic when Karen started this program, because even though my compost bin is full, you saw it, there are a lot of things that I was taught you can't put in there. And I have been quite successful at my composting. So I think the basic rules that I was given are pretty good. Oil is not something that you find in nature, that dropped from a tree or something. That your compost bin is kind of like what falls out of trees and, in a vegetable patch or in nature down and is going to compost normally. As soon as you add oil, if you've roasted them with oil, which I assume you might, then I would not put it in there because that is out of the realm of just basic nature. That's cooked, prepared food. And I always learned that was not compostable.
For the backyard program. Yeah,
for your backyard bin, which is why it's so wonderful to be able to put all of that stuff, scraps from people's plates and anything that's, a salad, if it's leftover salad that hasn't been dressed, into the backyard bin. Yes. If it has dressing on it, into the food scrap recycling.
Yes.
It's not really very complicated. Now, somebody put in the chat that they wanted us to go through the list again, and I'm happy to do that. Or Judy, one of us could do it. We could go through the distinction.
Okay. Do you want to go through? You want me to just list the accepted items? Is that what they were asking for?
So I think what people want is a feel, because we can actually set in the brochure that we will be sending. They will get the list of all of the accepted items for the food scrap recycling program. But the rule of thumb is anything that's like a raw, unprocessed vegetable or fruit or tea leaf or coffee ground or the shells from peanuts or other nuts. What other things can you think of, Judy? That's basically what goes into the backyard compost bin.
Right.
Anything that has been cooked or processed or has fat, animal fat or vegetable fat, but there's an amazing, when you peel a vegetable, the volume, we eat a lot of vegetables in my family, and the volume of stuff that goes in there is unbelievable
Right.
because it's very bulky. And
Mhm.
that's the whole thing about the composting, it's breaking it down.
Right.
I think that, so is that pretty clear, Judy? Do you want to say a little more? We
No,
will
I'm
be
just,
sharing the list.
I use the rule of thumb, and if you can put it in your mouth and eat it, you can compost it. So and the municipal program allows you to do more things only because it's on a scale that the heat and the water is all, is structured so that all of those items can be broken down, as opposed to in your backyard you can still, your fruits, your vegetables, anything like Elizabeth was saying, anything that, if you go in the produce aisle of the supermarket, those things can go in your backyard composting. If you do anything to them, that should go in the municipal composting. That's kind of how I break it out.
Right.
Okay. Any other questions?
Can you discuss backyard vermicomposting?
I cannot. I know that vermi means worm, if I didn't get that wrong, and I have not done that.
Mhm.
I haven't done it, so I don't know anything about it. I know people used to do it in apartments and things
Right.
like that. Which reminds me that we did want to say that food scrap recycling is completely possible to do if you are living in an apartment.
Absolutely.
In fact, whole cities do it.
Mhm.
It just means you have your little bin on your countertop, clean like anywhere else, and that you find a place to put your green bin.
Yes.
That could be in the garage if you have a garage with your apartment, or it could be in a common area if if you can negotiate with the apartment building to have that, or it could be in other spaces. We really want to encourage people who live in apartments to understand that they can do this too.
Absolutely. And I keep mine in my kitchen. So you'd be able, if you had an apartment, you'd be, I have space to put it outside. I just find it easier to keep in my kitchen, and it's never been a problem.
Okay, someone asked, any way you can share the presentation or Zoom recording? We are recording this, and I'll put it on our YouTube page tomorrow, and I'll email everyone that is here.
Great.
And someone wanted to know any thoughts on curbside food scrap pickup.
Ooh, yes, hopefully. Yeah, it's some of the other, and I neglected to say this, other communities are setting up composting programs, and some are further along the continuum than others. We're still at the voluntary drop off. The hopes are that as the numbers increase and people become more interested in it, it is something that the Larchmont Mamaroneck Sanitation Commission will take up. I know Scarsdale is doing I think they're doing a pilot of curbside pickup to see how that goes. And I don't know of any other community that is that far along, but I would love it. And some of my neighbors, I try to, when I see them out walking the dog, whatever, I'm trying to convert them to, if they're not composting. And a lot of them say, well, I'll wait for curbside. And my response is, well, if we wait for curbside, we may not get it. So you need to do the voluntary in order to get to the curbside.
And I'll just add to that, that last point is very important. We are trying to reach out people to get them interested and show what a neat kind of system this is. We feel that our kitchens are cleaner. They smell better. It's not just that you feel like you're doing the right thing. There's something very sort of natural and logical about the system that once you start doing it, you can't go back. It's hard to explain it until you've actually done it. People think it's a lot harder than it is, which is one of the reasons why Judy and I both wanted to talk about how we find this much better than any other prior system that we ever tried,
And I
from
couldn't,
every point of view.
yeah, and I couldn't imagine like throwing my food in a garbage again. I mean, it's gotten to a point where I know, you know, during the holidays, like the last Thanksgiving that we were able to have a Thanksgiving together, I literally brought my green bin to my parents' house, and I was like, you can't throw the turkey bones, like you have to put the food in my green bin and I will take it back to Larchmont. So it's one of those things, once you get, and I'm not an activist type person, but it's just one of those things that I thought, I couldn't imagine throwing food away in a regular garbage.
So Judy, I can't believe you just said that, because I've been known to go to Thanksgiving dinner. It really annoys the heck out of my kids. And I take all the food scraps home because I just can't stand it. You know, it's all that wonderful stuff.
Right.
First of all, I make turkey stock out of everybody's everything. And then, you know, those boiled up bones and everything else goes to the.
I'm not that ambitious, but I understand about, yes. Yeah. It's just, it's one of those, it does become second nature. It really does.
Yeah.
Someone wants to know, are gourds compostable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, unless I would say that if they do not have too much of a varnish on them, and that would be,
yeah.
I mean, it might be okay. Sometimes you see that they've been transformed into a bit of a work of art in order to last longer. But normally, as they come off the vine or are just dried off or just decorative, yes, absolutely, 100%. And somebody has a question here in the chat that I see about animals getting into the bins, and we wanted to talk about that. I've never had animals in any of my bins. So I think I may have seen a squirrel on the black giant compost bin in the backyard when I left the top open and I was lazy, it happens, and I didn't cover it with the browns. But when they're covered with the browns, I have never, ever seen any animal go near there. The birds don't even go there. Nobody goes there. I don't know why, but they don't. And the same is true for the green bin that I keep in my driveway. Even if an animal knocked it over, even if the wind knocked it over, it wouldn't open because the handle is a locking mechanism. But I haven't had any animals anywhere. So I think that one of the problems with backyard composting for people who haven't learned how to do it is that if you don't understand about adding in the brown material, and if you're going to add in the brown material, you're going to have to save your leaves either under your bushes and then haul them out, or just put them into bags. You know, when you're raking them up, the whole giant bag of leaves weighs as much as a feather. Very easy to do. I have a single car garage, believe it or not. They're still in there. It doesn't matter. There's plenty of room. If you're not alternating the browns and the greens, then the compost and adding some water, either rainwater or the hose water, maybe the compost process hasn't started. If you have, so I absolutely never have any animals. Back when everybody used to have raccoons, I didn't have raccoons. I can't really explain it, but I've never heard of compost piles that are properly managed attracting animals. That's the whole point. If you're doing it right, it doesn't attract animals.
Right. I had a little different experience in my backyard. When I first got I bought an earth machine, and the slots are a little bit different. They're vertical and they're open. And I mean, I have tons of squirrels on my property, and, you know, they've eaten my like lawn furniture. You know, they've kind of chewed my lawn furniture. They did go into my compost bin. And what I did was I went to Foley's and I got that very thin, it's not, I guess it's called chicken wire. It's like very thin mesh wire. And I wrapped it around the bottom of where they were, you know, kind of eating at the plastic. And I put just a couple of bricks around to keep it in place, and they've never come back again. So that was that was very early on. So it may have been, to your point, Elizabeth, I may not have been balancing it correctly, but I did, once I put the chicken wire and laid some bricks down to keep the chicken wire in place, they've never come back.
So I will say that I am quite sure that nobody in Larchmont, Mamaroneck has more squirrels and chipmunks than I do. I really had it taught, especially last year, because we had that year before where there were a lot of oak acorns, and then we had a lot of chipmunks and squirrels. You probably all noticed last summer, but they don't go anywhere near the, they're in my garden, or, you know, they don't go anywhere near the compost bin.
Okay.
Flies, somebody wrote about flies and mosquitoes. No, well, let's see, flies near the compost bin, not when the lid is down. And I don't think there really flies there, certainly no mosquitoes. Mosquitoes, I don't think, are interested in compost or anything of that nature. They're more interested in water.
Right.
And there's no water. I mean, even when you wet the compost bin, it's not very wet because it's all absorbed by the organic material in there. So flies, I really don't think I see flies there, but if there are flies there, it usually means to me that I need to put a few more leaves or leftover, you know, garden material that I've just collected in my bags. The other thing is, if you put it in, I even will sometimes use one of those giant black plastic garden bags, and I've used the same ones for years. I fill them with leaves. They're in the garage. They're very dry in there. So there's nothing, you know, that would attract any type of animal.
Yeah, and I haven't, for my backyard compost, I don't have any, never had flies or mosquito problems. And in the food scrap recycling, I don't. Now, the one thing I will say is, you know, when you leave your bananas around and whatever those little tsetse flies or whatever they're called, the little gnats or whatever they're called, sometimes if I don't take out my food scrap recycling countertop bin quickly enough, they accumulate. But they're on the fruit to begin with, and when you seal it up, when you tie it up and close it and put it into the green bin, it dissipates.
Okay, someone says, can the BPI bags be used for backyard composting?
In my opinion, no. It's not going to really be a problem. I mean, if you keep a BPI bag around for many weeks, it will start to disintegrate.
Right.
But yes, I wouldn't try to go that route. I mean, there isn't really any advantage to me in doing that. It's true that you do have to rinse out the pail, but when you're outside 9 months a year, that's easy to do with the garden hose.
Right.
I mean, the little countertop pail. So I don't think it's quite, mine isn't anyway, quite powerful enough or in there long enough to decompose of that.
I agree with you. I think one of those are probably best in a commercial, in a municipal scaled compost facility, because they do have all of the infrastructure, whether it be the air tubes or the water tubes, to break them down quicker.
Someone's saying that Tuckahoe is doing curbside pickup.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Okay.
And someone wanted to say that if you add compost to the compost bin, it'll also speed up the composting process.
Say that again. I'm sorry, Paul.
As you add compost to the compost bin, it will also speed up the composting
Good point.
process. That's all the questions I have in the chat.
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop recording, and then if everyone wants